And literally, I just took it off him and sprinted by him. And then my brother Carlos came, and I did the same to him. And I remember they both looked at me like, that moment changed my whole career. Because those guys were my heroes. Those guys I loved, I looked up to. And then when you get on the field, you realize we're all in the same spot. There's only one ball, there's 22 players. You got to give it what you got.
The official Manchester City podcast.
Welcome to the official Manchester City podcast with me, Rob Pollard, and as always, I'm joined by former City defender Nedum and Rob. Nedum, we've got Owen Hargreaves with us today. How excited are you for this one?
Very much so, very much so. So I played with him at City, and I was with him actually at QPR, even though it doesn't appear on his Wikipedia. And he's got some stories to tell. He's had quite an illustrious career.
Yeah, in doing the research for this, it definitely has hit me just how kind of the magnitude of the player, because his record, played at the top level throughout his career, won the biggest prizes in the game. I mean, this is the kind of guest we want, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's still some people won't understand, say, why he's on as such, but as soon as you start hearing him speak, I'm sure there'll be sort of an understanding, because as I say, he's so significant. But I think that's, as I look back, that was the nature of his career. A lot of people just slept on him and how good he was and what he was doing, but he still did pretty well outside of that.
And of course, he had a year at City, and that year was pretty significant. So although Owen was held back by injuries during that year, that was the year we won the league under Mancini, and things started to change.
The first Premier League title. I think anyone that was even around at that time is very, very significant. I think he'll probably have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I want to get some insight into the big players who were here at that time. So, okay, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe the podcast wherever it is you do your podcast listening, and that way you'll always be the first to know when we drop a new episode. But here we go with episode 3 of this New Look podcast with Owen Hargreaves. I want to go right back, if we can, to your time growing up. You know, you've got a very interesting family lineage. You were born in Canada, moved to Germany, British family. I mean, what's that like for a young person, and what does that do for your kind of identity, if you like?
To be fair, in a way, I've kind of got lost in it myself. I always consider myself a global citizen. That's what I call it now, because I was born and raised in Canada, lived there for 16 years, lived in Munich for 10 years, and then wanted to change scenery, football-wise, and moved to Manchester. So I feel blessed that I've been able to travel and have different experiences, learn different cultures, different languages, but I'm the only person in my family up to that point that had been born in Canada. Even my brothers, one was born in England, one was born in Wales. My mum's Welsh from Rhyl, my dad's from Bolton. They moved to Canada for my dad's job. And we grew up in a football family. My dad played semi-pro, my older brother played, and I just followed them around. I was the youngest of 3 boys, so we were a football family, and I just did what, you did what your dad did, what your older brothers did. Football was in the blood, even though I probably played more basketball in Canada than I did football.
So I presume your dad was a big influence on you then, because obviously he's played to a high level. You've gone on to be a footballer yourself. I mean, that must be nice. Well, I just think you do what your dad does and your brother does. You just follow them around, and I don't think there was any vision at all of to be a professional football player. My dad was very good. My dad used to play in these over 50 tournaments and always get best player. He was a number 10. He used to think he thought he was George Best. To be fair, he was a baller, to be fair, because he used to play against some of my mates when I moved to Munich, and they used to say, your dad's still running the show. So in a way, it was, he obviously probably wanted his kids to play. My older brother was a really good player, was a centre forward, probably had the potential probably to be a pro, really, from his attributes. Bolton off on a contract when he was 18. He went back home to finish last year's school and then towards ACL. So when the opportunity came for me, they, being the youngest, they didn't put any, just let me go and take that opportunity.
Did you have pressure on yourself seeing what your dad did, or was it just a case you could enjoy it?
No, I didn't have any pressure. I didn't really know I was that good. I don't know, when you were a kid, you
must have known you were good.
No. I mean, in all the teams that I played on, I was always kind of the guy that if you needed a goal,
You'd be you, yeah.
But I played further forward. I was a 10, basically. I think we all probably were as kids.
That's where we start. That's where
and
we
then
start.
You realize,
finish,
and then the higher up the chain you go, you realize, whoa, there's some better 10s than me, and then you kind of gradually work your way back, don't you? So athletic, I was very lucky. I was very quick, and I had great endurance. I was always the quickest. I was always won all the endurance things. But I think the thing that helped me become a pro was being the youngest of 3 boys. So I played against my older brothers that were really competitive. Your brothers, to kick the life out of you. That's just how it is. And you just got to learn to take it on the chin. So I think when I got into the football environment, I was quite I was quite resilient. You know, obviously there's a lot of talented boys in our ages. You go up to the 14s, 16s, 18s, and everybody can play. Everybody's the best player from his neighborhood, from his city, his country. But then you get all these kids in one room, and City probably have it here now with all these kids. You get all these kids are the best of the best, but something's got to give, you know. And it's not so much, it's not the talent that gets there. You know, it's the head and it's the heart. And you never really know who's going to be that guy, Nedum, do you?
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So really, that's why they say with the young kids, it's sink or swim. You know, you throw them in and you see the ones that make it are the ones that swim, you know, and it's tough, but that's just how the business is.
Were you somebody who expected to achieve the level of success that you achieved, or did you just kind of drift, you know, and get better and better kind of in a more natural and organic way?
Yeah, no, never ever. I mean, I think my dad probably had visions of me, but you can't have them where I grew up. I grew up in Canada. I mean, to be honest, I didn't want to ask my parents for any money when I was a kid, so I worked at McDonald's when I was 14 after school. I was a chef. So
hold on. Did he say a chef? Is it a chef in McDonald's?
I was cooking. I was a chef.
Is it cook or a chef? Come on, let's address that now.
I was in the kitchen.
There we go.
I used to be able to see my buddies through
I've seen some burgers come out of McDonald's.
Trust me,
they're cooks in there, not chefs.
Trust no chefing. But to be fair, you're cooking, you know. So
this is true.
But it was cool. It was cool to have a job, you know. And then I played basketball after school, and then I got an opportunity to go to Bayern, kind of do this coach who was German on trial. And I remember thinking, my dad saying to me, this is Bayern Munich. No, these guys are a real deal. And I was saying, yeah, what am I going to know about Bayern Munich? What am I going to know about Germany as a 15-year-old boy? And I remember I went on trial, and the whole team was like under 17 national players. And everybody was telling me how hard it's going to be. And I remember once the ball rolled after about 2 minutes, and Nedum will understand this, I knew, I'm okay here. And this light went off in my head, like, you can do this. And from that moment on, I had that probably 3 or 4 times in my career. I had it in that moment, and I thought, right, I can do this. And after that, they offered me a contract, and I had the same feeling. I remember playing my first year as a pro, Champions League semi-final. One of our players was suspended, and I had to start the semi-final. And our coach had all these other guys that he could have played, older guys, early 30s. And in the end, he canvassed all the players, and they said, no, play Owen, which I didn't know at the time. I remember standing in the tunnel before the semi-final. I looked across, and Luis Figo was in the white Real Madrid kit, looked like absolute god.
Yes.
Had the hair gel back. And he literally, and I remember looking at him thinking, God, he looks like he's glowing or something. Literally before the game, I was thinking that before the game. I was thinking, I think he's glowing or something. And obviously he would have never known me, right? Being a young kid. None of the Real players would have known me. But I remember after like 5 minutes in the game, he's like exactly where Nedum is. And he just laid the ball in front of me. He obviously didn't know me. He didn't know I was really quick. And when he just left it there, like where the table was, I remember thinking, can't do that. Can't leave that there. I'll take that. And literally, I just took it off him and sprinted by him. And then Roberto Carlos came, and I did the same to him. And I remember they both looked at me like, what?
Wow.
And I never forget, that moment changed my whole career. Because those guys were my heroes. Those guys I loved, I looked up to. And then when you get on the field, you realize we're all in the same spot. There's only one ball, there's 22 players. You got to give it what you got. And that game after, I was on a reserve team contract at the time. I went in the dressing room after, we won, got to the final, and Karl-Heinz Rummenigge came in. I was just getting a glass of water, just like that, and he went, you outplayed your contract. We'll give you a new one tomorrow. And that's how it started. So from that moment on, so the under-17 one that I had playing with these national players, and then that one, then I just thought, forget it. I'm just going to swing for the fences every time I play. And let's see where the chips fall. I might make it there. I might make it there. But what I learned was my best was good enough, which is a really powerful thing for
belief, yeah.
For any young kid, or because everybody tells you you can or you shouldn't, or don't dream too big. No, dream big. Back yourself and see where the chips fall.
Yeah.
My dad used to always say to me, just give me your best. Don't care how you play, just give me your best. And that's how I try to play football.
What?
Try and tell us about the size and the magnitude of a club like Bayern Munich, because they are one of the biggest in the world, aren't they? So what's it like being in an environment like that?
You know what? It's a huge club, but it's a big family club too. The guys that run the club, was Franz Beckenbauer, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, Uli Hoeneß. So basically, I just started training with the pros in Bayern. So I went from the 18s into the reserve team, and their reserve team played in the equivalent of League One, which was brilliant. So we'd have all these talented young kids which come from the academy. All the boys can play, but they don't really know how to compete yet in men's football, and there's a big difference. And then you go into that league, and there was a lot of older Eastern European players, and those guys wanted to win to pay their mortgage, because the bonuses were huge. So you had all these guys going, come on, like you have to learn to compete. And then when I went into the reserve team, that was brilliant because we had kind of a couple older mentors that helped us. But Uli Hoeneß and Franz Beckmann, they used to come watch. You know, if you were slacking, you're not going to train with the first team. And then I remember I went into the first team and I was kind of on the, you know, you're on the fringes as a young kid. And on the Mondays, a lot of the you know, like Uli Hoeneß and Rummenigge, they used to have a kickabout on a Monday on these little goals. For whatever reason, I joined in. And I remember Rummenigge saying to me after, he said, I mean, imagine I'm in around the first team already, right? And he says to me, obviously, so I sprinted by him quite a few times. He said, hey, you might have something on. You know, I was like, what? You've already given me a contract. I'm here. But I've just sprinted by a 55-year-old, you know, ex-pro. And he said, oh, you might have something. And that's kind of, Bayern was cool like that because you always had, you know, Uli Hoeneß, who was a great goal scorer in his generation. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge was the best player in the world at the time in his generation. You know, so you had Gerd Müller, used to be the reserve team assistant coach. So you had all these kind of old school greats, Bayern greats, that were in and around. And they kept it very family. They kept the boys really humble and hungry, which I thought was cool.
Did you ever feel like real pressure when you were there? Because it feels from the outside like they're just the biggest team in Germany, almost by a mile. Do you feel that pressure when you wear that shirt, or is it more?
Oh yeah, definitely. Every day we used to have fights in training. Every day, guys were so competitive. I remember when I first joined the first team, and back then, like in England, was different because when I got into the England team, couldn't believe how accommodating all the older players were. You know, David Seaman and Teddy Sheringham, and all the guys were incredibly accommodating. Whereas in Germany, they were kicking the life out of me every day. And that's how it was. You know, you pick the balls up, you pick the cones up. You know, you do as you're told. You open doors for the older guys, which was cool. That's how my dad raised me. But I remember I just started training with the first team. I was training pretty good, and all the old boys were smashing me every day. And, you know, they'd smash you and pick you back up. Then you learn not to say anything. And I remember the manager was watching Hitzfeld at the time, and he could tell the boys were frustrated with me because I was training well. Anyway, so all the guys went in. I had to collect the balls and the count. And he said, look, let me give you a piece of advice. If they're angry at you, it's because you're good. And they fear losing their spot. He said, I can't side with you because I got to have the backing of the older players. I got to be seen to on their side. But he said, every time you step on this football pitch, you hunt every one of them and you let them know you're here. He said, when it finishes, you collect the balls, you open the doors, and you got to be a gentleman. That was probably the best piece of coaching advice I ever got. So for me, every time I stepped on the pitch, I was going to give my best and let them know I was there.
Does that make you, Rob, want to be a part of that, or does that scare you when you think about how you play football?
It scares me, yeah. I mean, yeah, I've not got that competitive nature, hence the reason, you know, you guys are sat where you are.
You must see that as well. And like, when you play and you're surrounded by people and you're in that environment, it feels perfectly normal. But then, say for me personally, since I've retired, I've stepped on the other side and I play football against lots of amateurs who think that they could play, but they don't have that thing to be able to survive that and to sort of thrive in it as well.
Oh no, it's such a different thing, and that's what people always say to him. We all love football. We're all around football. My dad played, my older brother played. It's like a recipe. You gotta have all the ingredients for the recipe. You might be able to play, and you might have great skills. But what I learned was, and it became a very powerful thing in a way. And I didn't say it to be rude to people, but off the pitch I was pretty quiet, pretty chill. On the pitch, I'm coming for you every time. And I used to say to people, as I learned that the bigger the game got, the better I got. And I didn't know that until I was really young. Mm. And it's like I grew into the game and I could almost outplay my own ability. But what was interesting was I could outperform people that were better than me, that had more talent than me. And when you know you have more talent than me and I can outperform you, that's quite humbling. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what that environment is. Nedum knows, you've been there. It's every man for himself in a way. Yeah. And you got to have it when you need it. And that's like, you know, like the Champions League. Everybody's great. Everybody can play. All the men are great. You got to have it when you need it. And that's all football is at the highest level. You know, all the boys can play. But the competitive side, I think, is the most important element kind of in professional sports.
That's the differentiator between the best.
I would say so. And I think overall what I would say is from the outside, you see, it's easier for people from the outside to see talent. But when you're on the inside, you see the other stuff as well. You know, so the people who say, fans and stuff overall say, oh, this guy should be playing week in, week out. Sometimes people on the inside know why they're not playing week in, week out.
100%.
And it's because of that little bit of je ne sais quoi, or the sort of the dogged nature of what it is to be a great professional. Because in my example, I think maybe you were there for it. Was the Delta Raptor at QPR when you came towards the end?
So that was interesting because basically I'd done all this training to get fit. And the medical staff at City were crazy good. I went from a place where I couldn't walk sometimes, and I trained every day for 5 months. To me, that was priceless. And I remember they all saw the work that I put in. I respect the fact they were so patient with me. And they said, "Owen, you can't retire." Now even Roberto Mancini said to me, he said, "I'd give you another contract if I could, but you haven't played enough games, so I can't, And I said, no, I wasn't that type. I said, I completely respect that. He said, but Platty, all of them said to me, "You can't retire. You're training every day, you're playing." And they'd had a lot of people at QPR, ex-City people. So they said, "You should go there." So anyway, so I went and did a few days. Sparky was the manager, wasn't he? And to be, I probably never told you this story, but those 2 days helped me make my mind up to retire. And I remember seeing Sparky a couple months later doing a TV show, and he said to me, "What happened? I thought you were going to sign for me because you guys were going on a tour in Europe, Italy, I think it was at the time." And he said to me, "What happened? I thought you were going to sign." I said, "To be honest, Sparky, do you want the truth?" And he went, "Yeah." I said, I watched training, or I trained a couple of days, and then I listened to the dressing room, and I thought, "No, this is not for me."
Yeah.
Not in a critical way, but I'd never been used to a level like that. I'd never not played in Champions League, and I'm all for the boys having a good time, having fun and stuff. But when you get on the pitch, it's all business, and I think obviously you had quite a mishmash of
everything. Yeah.
You got talent, and you had a real mix, and that's hard to get the culture right. And I think that's where you see a lot of teams struggle. And I remember saying to Sparky at the time, I said, "Look, I forgot the way I worded it. I said to him, yeah, that was never gonna work." He said, "I wish you would have told me," because he probably got the sack a couple months later. But I think when you've been in around those environments, Nedum, you've been there, and then you go into a different one like that, it's quite a contrast.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I thought about that team was, I thought obviously the talent of the players was crazy good. It was so good, and maybe so good that they actually didn't really know what they had. Some of them, the collection of players that they had. But the interesting thing I thought was you had the best players in the whole team. Yaya was amazing, and then Sergio and David Silva, they all pretty much didn't say much, which is very interesting because most of the top teams and the top players, they're the vocal ones, aren't they? And so the star players were quite quiet. They kind of were silent leaders, and then you had a strong dressing room with with Nigel and Jolien and Vinny and Joe Hart, and you had these Gareth Barry, you had these guys that were leaders, but actually the superstars were orchestrating in the background. I thought it made for a really interesting dynamic in a way, because those 3 or 4 I thought were just, they took the level from there to there.
What about Roberto Mancini? He's a manager who kind of sometimes divides opinion. The fans at City love him obviously because he delivered success and changed the mentality of the entire football club. How did you find him for that year?
You know what? I got on with him really well, actually, but I'm probably a bad gauge because I get on well with pretty much most people. But I think he knew where I came from, and that I ended up playing for England even though it wasn't my country. I ended up making a Bayern when, nobody come through the academy in a long time. So he was a player. He knew what it took to get there, and then I had the injury that I had. He saw me kind of training. Then I kind of did a medically, flew me to Italy to meet his guy to get his okay. He was cool. Then I came back and did the City one, and I quite like Roberto. He was a straight shooter. He wasn't as sensitive as people probably would want him to be, but the environment isn't suited to that. And but I got on with him well. And in the end, this industry is all about results, and it's great if you can be super nice all the time. But I don't think that environment suits that. In a way, I just think you just saw with Graham Potter at Chelsea, it's a different environment. If you're not used to it, then I think Roberto being in it as a player and with the national team and as a manager, I think he brought his own feel to it, but he ran the show. That's for sure.
So, having spent that year here, were you surprised to see how well City have done, or
no.
Having spent that year here, are you seem not expected?
I was blown away by what they had on and off the pitch. People look at, and I always say to people always look at, the players and stuff, and they've had some pretty super special players. Don't get me wrong, some of the best. What they had on the pitch with what people saw, they had in every department that people didn't see. Medically, in the gym, the guys, the physios, the day-to-day stuff, just everyone, wasn't it, Nedum? They just had all these people, throughout the whole football club, they had all these guys that were just doing their job immaculately. And that's when I was like, wow, this is for real. Because, you can look at teams and you can go sign big hitters and, and thing is now, and you see it in the transfer market, Manchester City don't really miss it. You know, they don't really miss. To me, I didn't really see them missing any departments. I couldn't believe how many boxes they ticked in off the pitch. You know, you look at Yaya and David and Sergio. Yeah, that's easy. You know, anybody can see that.
Yeah.
But whoever was able to put the infrastructure behind deserves a ton of credit, because that was as impressive as what you could see every day.
That was 100%. I think that's one of the biggest things that I saw across the years is when they came in, they wanted to be the best, but the best wasn't specific to just being on the field.
Yeah.
Like they knew that would come with the other stuff as well.
And you would have seen it going
I saw it
from, you know,
I saw
after you left here.
Yeah. It's the way it's changed is amazing. Even to be in this studio now,
Yeah.
you know, even to see the training ground the way that it is and the design of it, how everything's together, how everything's geared towards going to this place, how everything's geared towards performance, finding that extra 1% across all departments.
So, but also, I mean, when you go to other teams, you know, QPR or whatever, you know, and you see when the structure's not there and you don't have the mentality, all of a sudden you think, when you're used to something, it's hard, because you think, how come we don't have that? Or how come the boys aren't training? Or how come you know, and again, Nedum's right, these little things, they all add up. But when you're having to be there and baby it all the time, it's, you know, it's really challenging. Whereas with Manchester City, they just, you know, everything was just set. And I think that they changed the culture pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When I was at QPR, you know, we couldn't train on Wednesdays. Did you know that? And we couldn't train on Wednesdays because the university in London had their place for sports days, and that's in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So if we had any sort of reason to recover or whatever, like we can't do it. We had to go somewhere else.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Who was the best player at City for that year? Because you talked there about, obviously, Yaya, David Silva, Aguero, but day to day, minute to minute, who was the one who you came away and just thought, you can't test that person?
It's hard to compare. They're all so different and they're all so unique. I love Vinny for his leadership and his, you know, his mentality. Yaya was just a phenomenon, you know, just size, technical ability, so much better player than, you know, I think we saw him at Barca and he played as like a defensive midfield player. And then you see him, and then in training every day you think, wow, this guy is like, he's a Ferrari, you know, like he's quick, he's strong, his feet, you know, his touch. Sergio was like, get it in and around the box. You know, Sergio was just like, get it in his feet, it's a goal. You know, like drop short, it's a goal. Carlos was the same. Carlos, you know, I love Carlos. I absolutely love Carlos. Not a great trainer, I hope you don't mind me saying that, but I tell you what, when the lights come on in the game,
he's there,
he's your guy.
Yeah.
Or you put your house on him, you know, and I love that the Argentinians, they got this fire in them, which I just think is amazing. But for me, I love all the boys, they're amazing. But David Silva, that guy, like Nedum was was a great athlete, physical defender, could play everything. But these guys, you think, when you look at them and you think,
you should be able to take the ball from them.
Nedum and David, you think, I'm taking that off you.
Lost.
But you can't. This is what happens when you play David Silva. This distance we have between us, 2 meters. That's what David Silva finds in the game, the whole game.
Yeah.
I said to him once, joking, I said to him in training, because he's so light on his feet, I swear you can't even hear him. Most of the boys, you know, they're breathing and they're pounding. You hear everything, they're grunting. David was just like, this. He was just floating around. And I remember we were in training once, and I was always defensive middle, so I checked my shoulder, he's there. Boom, checked my shoulder, gone. That's how he was. And I remember saying to him, I was just joking. I said, tell you what, David, if it doesn't work out in football, you'd have a great career breaking into places because you can't hear you. Literally, he was just like this. He was so light on his feet and his touch, and he was 2 steps ahead. And that's a gift. You know, that's a gift he has. I mean, you can talk physical elements and speed and strength and all that stuff. But what he had to see the game 2 steps ahead, I think, and you see it a little, obviously with Messi and, you know, and Kevin, De Bruyne a little bit. They feel for the game. They know where the ball's going to go and where it's going to end up and what's going to happen. And I think that to do that in a game that's become so physical and so athletic, I found really remarkable.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because with David, I'd probably argue a little bit like a Bernardo Silva sometimes when he gets on the ball. It doesn't make sense. Here's this small person with no physical attribute that has the ball at their feet, so I'm just going to go and take it.
Yeah.
I was like, no, next thing they're going somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's so hard to compute, but I think you know, there's a lot of debate about who's the best of this generation and so on between Messi, Ronaldo and alike. And my take, because you've obviously played with Ronaldo, is with Messi, there's certain things he does which you can't coach. He just sees a different game altogether. Ronaldo's incredible, but like what Messi does is what Messi does. I can't say to my kid, we're going to watch all these clips and you're going to be this person.
Can't see it.
No.
You know what I mean?
But I think Messi has something, and I think there's probably levels of it, and Messi's probably an extreme version of it. He sees the game 0.1 seconds quicker than everyone else. And I don't know how he does it. But by the time he gets it, he's made his decision. He's already scanned.
Yeah.
You know, whereas most of us, we get it and then we scan. And I think for Messi, for whatever reason, his ability to create a picture in amongst all that chaos and be ready. And I think David had that a little bit. You know, he always had a picture of what he wanted to do and where the ball ended up, and you couldn't get anywhere near him.
Right.
And I thought that was, and all the guys were amazing, but I just thought David had something. And if you look at the numbers and assists and goals, they're not, you know, we're in such a number-obsessed generation.
Yeah.
But I think pure football-wise, David was a beauty.
What about in terms of your international career? When did you know you were going to play for England, and how did that approach happen? Because presumably you could have played for other countries.
About 5 different countries now.
Yeah, you're crazy. So Canada wanted me to play. I got cut from the Canada under 14 team, I think it was. Said I was
Wild decision.
Yeah, I said I was too small, which is cool. No,
fair enough, yeah.
And then I went to Bayern, and then they called me back up when I was at Bayern, kind of breaking through it. I mean, it's a 10-hour flight, you know, you're trying to make it at Bayern, and they said, look, we want you to come into a camp. And I said, look, I can't, you know, I'm here. And they said, I remember they said, look, if you don't come now, then, you know, that ship's sailed for you. I'm thinking, saying that to a 17-year-old kid, I thought, that's
tough,
so strange.
Yeah.
And then I broke into the first team not long after. And then in my first year, we won the Bundesliga with the last kick of the game. We won the Champions League against Valencia. And so Canada wanted me to play. I think Germany wanted me to play. Wales wanted me to play. And all of a sudden, I had all these options, you know, and I always thought I was going to play for Canada because I'm Canadian born and bred, even though my whole family's British, English and Welsh. But in the end, what's the one thing you want to do as a young man, as a kid, is make your dad proud. You know, my dad's a proud Englishman. You know, it was weird because I was obviously an outcast in the dressing room because, you know, my accent, everyone knows I'm born in Canada, I'm playing in Germany. I couldn't have made it more.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't have stuck out anymore.
You're not part of any of them cliques.
No, but you know what? I always treated myself, I was like Switzerland. I was just independent. You know, you had these really strong Man United and Liverpool and Chelsea. You know, you had all these big, strong cliques. You know, at the dinner table, everybody sat together. And then you had a few of the boys that were from mixed teams that used to sit together, the young boys as well. And I could just roll around with anyone because I didn't really have any affiliation. But yeah, sometimes I felt like I wasn't, you know, people like, what's a Canadian German guy? People thought I was German. I just worked in Germany. Do you know what I mean? I was just playing there. But I remember we had at the World Cup 2006, I had to, so I got named in the squad. And I think in the meeting room or in the room that they did it, the journals booed as they announced the squad. So Adrian Beverton, who I still speak to this day, is a great guy. He said, look, we gotta sit down with these guys and have a chat because they, you know, they're not really having you. Yeah. So I thought, okay, that's weird. I thought they
imagine that these days, journalists booing someone.
So
nonsense.
So anyway, I remember we were at the Lowry Hotel and I sat down with the Sunday journals, about 8 or 10 of them. I'm sure they'll all remember me and Adrian before the World Cup 2006, and they're basically, why are you here? And I said, guys, with the utmost respect, I'm sure you guys are pretty good at your job, but I said, if you guys would have done your homework, which I'm sure you have, and that's why we're having this conversation, you wouldn't be asking that question because I'm pretty good at my job too. So I said, obviously, you boys, you know, are quite strong on the Premier League and you watching that, but you know, watching the Bundesliga, which is fine. But I said, if you watch me play, you would never say what you're saying to me. Anyway, so and Adrian said to me, yeah, you know, could have toned it down a little bit, but you know, I meant it, you know, and I wasn't trying to be difficult. And funny enough, I think the narrative came from somebody that's doing my job now, I'm going to name names, who basically said, I shouldn't be in there. And then that creates, you know, people kind of form their opinions off the back of that. Anyway, and I remember at the end of the World Cup, we lost to Portugal. And I walked through the mix zone and all the journalists give me a round of applause to the same guys. You know, and it's not about trying to like prove anybody wrong, but the point is, you know, and that's why when I do this job now, I don't say anything I don't believe. And I make my own opinions. I don't let anybody kind of force what they want on me or any narratives. I watch the game myself. I've been there as a player. Don't try and be critical. I try and speak from a point where I'm trying to help a player, you know, improve or avoid some of the mistakes that I've made. But it makes you realize there's a lot of people doing these jobs that don't do the homework properly. And it's amazing how so in a way I had to fight that narrative for quite a long time, you know, being Canadian and playing in Germany. Only then did it kind of people go, okay, well, we'll accept him, which was fine, because I had to get it the hard way pretty much my whole career.
That story makes us sound so insular, doesn't it, as a country?
Yeah, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And
less so now, though, sure. I mean, that wouldn't happen now.
I'll tell you what was amazing, though. Before, we had a last game at Old Trafford before the World Cup, and we had to do like a round of, to thank fans before we went off.
Yeah.
And never forget, so we're doing like a circle, and there was a couple guys in the first row, and they had these T-shirts made up, and it said, "The Bundesliga is rubbish." Like, I imagine they made that, they got to all that effort just
How
to like,
dare.
and I remember thinking, this is going to be, and to be fair, when I got to the World Cup, because you're in the team hotel or whatever, and I knew obviously there was a bit of negativity around whatever, didn't turn the TV on once, didn't go on the internet once. I used to get into a room and I used to train, I used to stretch, I used to sit-ups, push-ups. So I had no noise, obviously it was before social media, and I would tell the boys to do the same. All that stuff is just noise. You got to focus on your craft. And it was amazing how, if I could just focus on what I could control, which was my work ethic or what I could control, it's amazing actually how when you start worrying about all this stuff, it clouds your, you think, should I do this, should I not? If you just go for it and, give it your best and see where the chips fall, it is quite amazing how far you can go.
It's fantastic, that.
What did you think of Sven?
Oh, I love Sven. Sven, I mean, he loved me, to be fair, because when he needed me, I was there for him. And he knew that, fair play to him for picking me, because we had a coach at Bayern who was the guy that brought me to Bayern Munich at the time at 16. He was the guy, Bjorn Andersen, he was a Swede. He was the guy who saw me train and said, yeah, we'll take him. He's got something. Don't know what it is, but he's got something. So he was quite close to Sven, and they used to come watch with Tor Grip. And whenever Sven used to, pick me or watch me play, I always played quite well, and I was always really naturally fit. So we were in England camp, and we had, back in the day, the polar belts and all that. It was pretty basic technology, but and I remember you used to come into the team hotel. I think it was Sopwell House at the time in Hertfordshire, and you come in, and it'd be like, "Oh, come here, come look at this." So you go in this room, and they had these belts, and like where they were kind of, the data was just uploading. He'd be like, "Look how fit you are," and I said, "What do you mean?" I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm like early 20s. He's like, "Look how fit you are." He said, "We got like the best of the best, and you recover way quicker than anyone here." He said, "It's crazy." And I said, yeah. I said, that's great. But that was my strength. So I think Sven he knew I had this determination in me, but also physically and athletically, I could play a lot of different positions and do a lot of things. But I think he just knew I'd be there for him when he needed me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. I think Sven was good at sort of bringing out the best in everyone in his team.
Yeah.
And I think everyone that I've come across really enjoyed having Sven as a coach. And it's not because he's, say, just soft or whatever. It's because he just knows how to get that little bit extra out of you by understanding who you are as a person and what your game is.
But I think in this country, everybody wanted shouting and yelling and these hero speeches and all that.
And that's what annoys me a bit, because people misjudge
nonsense,
him.
Isn't it? Yeah.
They misjudge him because they want to see someone on the sideline that's ranting and raving and shouting and screaming. But everyone on the field is trying their best for their manager in Sven, because they have that extra connection with him.
And he was just so calm, wasn't he? He was so chill. I think a lot of the boys love that.
One of the nicest guys in football.
Yeah.
Certainly that.
Here's a misconception for you. Okay, so this is my perspective. I don't know if you're the same, Owen, but if I'm on the field, more often than not, the manager will be trying to shout stuff onto the field, but you can't really hear them.
No chance.
So if I see someone on the sideline that's panicking and basically having some sort of panic attack on the side, it doesn't make things better.
No.
When someone's quite calm and can pass over information, if they're calm, it means they believe in what's going on, they understand it, they trust it, and they'll give you the information when they need it. Yeah. As opposed to the ones on the sideline who are like kicking every ball and getting involved in everything.
You're right, Nedum. There's 70,000 people saying we can't hear what they're saying.
You just nod. You're like, yeah.
Pretending you've got the message.
Not got a clue what they're saying. Not got a clue.
We're gonna have to wrap it up, unfortunately, because we are running out of time. But one very quick question on England. Obviously, the failure of the golden generation has been poured over, but a lot of it comes down to the fact that we rigidly stuck to 4-4-2. Just dead quickly, what formation should we have adopted in that time, do you think, to have had more success on that stage?
I don't know. Almost everybody was undroppable. You're not going to drop Bex, Scholesy, or Stevie G, or Frank, or Michael Owen, or Wayne Rooney. Everybody was kind of the guy in his team, and I think that was one of the biggest problems we had. Everybody was the guy in his team, so when he got it, he'd do something. But then when we got to international football, and everybody was trying to hit that pass, and then you play Croatia, and all of a sudden we had a lot of great ball players. And I said this to Brian Marwood when I met him before, when I was San City. the problem is not so much when you're playing with the ball, is when you don't have it, who's going to get it back? And I wasn't thinking about myself, but we played anybody with England and we got popped off the pitch for fun. And it wasn't so much they were better than us, but we didn't have the balance right. And you're right, it probably was a 4-4-2, but Heskey did a great job back in the day. And that's how we played, you know. So we always my first game for England, I played left wing because they were looking for a left winger for a decade. I'd never played left wing in my life.
No.
But in a way, so we were trying to work around that. I think now with the way formations and structure, imagine having Pep with England, with that group of players.
Be amazing.
But in a way, you know what? I think everybody says we underachieved. Yeah, we did. Of course we did. But we lost to Brazil in 2002.
A great Brazil team.
A ridiculous one. Then we lost in 2004. That was probably the best team I played in. When Wesley burst onto the scene on penalties to Portugal, and lost in 2006 to Portugal on penalties.
Yeah.
So
fine margins.
The margins are really fine,
Yeah.
and I think you see that with Manchester City in the Champions League. You're always right there, and you never really know. Sometimes just on the day,
Don't
the
go for
margins
it.
are fine. That's just how it is at the elite level. So we experienced that
Yeah.
with England, and it's very humbling. But that's the nature of the beast, and I think so. Respect the fact. I'm sure we would all love. We all want stuff with our clubs, and we're thinking we never did because we didn't get the blame right. We weren't good enough. And
We have a few questions we ask every guest. Number one, if you could change one rule in football, what would it be?
great question. Can we come back to that one?
We can come back to that.
That's such a good one. I need to think about.
Yeah, another question. So we ask each guest to ask the next guest a question, even though we're not going to tell you who that guest is. Our last guest was Scott Carson, and he asked, what's the biggest occasion you've ever been involved in your football career?
I would say,
Watch, this is going to flex on us now.
Yeah.
Here we go.
when did you know you're going to make it?
That's a question.
Okay.
When did you know you're going to make it? Because I remember that's quite a powerful feeling when you know you're there. You know, because it's so hard. You know, I'm sure all the boys at the academy now, they all think, but you're not really sure. And then when you make that step and it's like your feet are set in stone, and that, to me, that's a really powerful, like the one I had as when I played against Figo. That's a powerful feeling.
And most players must have.
Everybody will have had it.
Yeah.
But what was the answer to the question then?
So the answer from Scott for you is, what's the biggest occasion you've ever been involved in?
I had so many big ones.
He's doing the thing. He's flexing on us.
Champions
He's got
League
so many.
final.
Final 1, Final 2,
Yeah.
you know,
I
the
wouldn't-
Bundesliga, Premier League.
Yeah, there was so many. Do you know what? I wouldn't say I stopped celebrating. I know it sounds a really horrible thing to say, but I stopped celebrating in the end because I stopped setting goals anymore because I kept going beyond what I could have ever dreamed of. So in the end, I just kept swinging for the fence every time. So, you know, how are you going to compare my first game as a pro or your first goal or, you know, winning a Champions League? My first season, we won the Bundesliga with the last kick of the game, literally last free kick of the game. And then we won the Champions League 2 weeks later. And I remember thinking, is this
completed already? First season.
But do you know what? I remember the feeling I had after winning the Champions League. I think it was 19 or 20. I remember thinking, it's a horrible thing, but I was like, is that it? I thought I was going to feel different. You know, I thought I was going to, like something was going to happen to me and I was going to be this different person. But in the end, you still got to wake up and you still got to go again. And that's the thing I learned at Bayern, you know. It's great to win, but can you do it again? Can you go do it again? So I think winning it the second time, you know, I enjoyed it a little bit more because you know what it takes to kind of get there.
Brilliant. What's the last thing you binged? Like TV series, book, podcast series? What's the last thing you really got into?
You know what? To be fair, I don't watch much television. I watch. It sounds ridiculous, but I watch YouTube.
That's my guy.
So you do?
That's my guy there. That's exactly. I don't really watch TV. I watch YouTube.
I love telly, but like back in the day with like Homeland and all that, you get so into it. But then you're 5 seasons in, and you're like, it's a commitment to, you know. Whereas with that, you can pick and choose 10 minutes, 20 minutes.
Exactly. Curate your content.
To watch
yeah.
a bit of, I don't know, sport, cooking, life. You know, there's so many cool things on there. You know, that you pop in anything and you can learn it. So it's cool.
So what about a rule change? Have you thought of one? Football rules, if you could change one thing.
I think if you dive, you should get a week's wages.
Yeah.
Week's wages.
Do you know, because I think that would cut it out real quick. You know, we don't really like, nobody really likes diving. I remember I did it once. I think I did as a kid. My dad said to me, "Don't you ever do that again."
It's cheating.
I'm not going to come watch this ever again. I'd never ever dived again. So I think, in a way, obviously it's a cultural thing in certain places, it's accepted and stuff. But I think we'd get rid of it pretty sharpish.
But that sounds like a rule change for someone that's got a defensive mind.
No, but I think none of us like that.
No one likes it. No.
You gotta.
See, you dive too many times.
Listen, I've never done it once. I don't know how to do it.
I couldn't dive. I was always late.
Well, yeah,
delayed.
I don't know how to do it, but yeah.
Owen Hargreaves, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
The official Manchester City podcast with Rob Pollard and Nedum and Rob.
That was Owen Hargreaves in conversation there on the official Manchester City podcast. Nedum, what did you make?
Unreal. Absolutely unreal. I think my favourite bit, to be fair, was when he was talking about being a young kid standing in a tunnel next to just Real Madrid and seeing Figo, Roberto Carlos just there looking at you. Like, that's amazing. That's genuinely amazing.
Tell you what, he was really candid, and usually with a guest it's good to bring him in and maybe 5 or 10 minutes to warm up. He just didn't seem to need it. He sort of like walked in the room and was ready to talk, wasn't he?
I think you can kind of tell that he does work in TV, but I think even at the end, I think the way that he described how he works on TV and how he's trying to be as fair as possible, I think that shouldn't be slept on either.
Yeah. What a life and career. It was really
not too bad, is it?
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Anyway, that's all we've got time for on this episode of the official Manchester City podcast. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe wherever it is you do your podcast listening, and that way you'll always be the first to know when we drop a new episode. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us today. Take care, and we will see you next time.
The official Manchester City podcast. Watch the full video version of this show via City Plus and Recast Now. This podcast is produced by VoiceWorks Sport and Manchester City.